It was nearly dark in Dirkton town, and the inhabitants were beginning to close their shops and head home for the night. The high street was bustling with activity, with people returning from work as well as horse-drawn wagons transporting foresters back from the eastern woods. At the local Apothecary, a wooden framed building with cream-painted walls located in a terrace of shops along the high street, the apothecary's apprentice was sweeping the waxed wooden floor. He took particular care when sweeping around the shelves as not to damage or spill the contents of various elixirs and remedies that were stored in glass containers. But the young apprentice took his time. Normally, when he had finished sweeping, he had dismissed himself while his master recorded the day's earnings into the books. But today he had a question for his master. A question regarding a recent list of common herbs useful for curing all sorts of ailments, but one, namely red kappa, seemed out of place. Sweeping away the last of the dirt, the apprentice placed his broom in a cupboard behind the main counter. He then returned just as his master finished taking stock of today's earnings. So that's 4,200 creme for today's sales, Master Gaunt thought out loud as he scribbled the figure into the account. A reasonable stack of silver coins sat to his left. Sounds about normal, Master Gaunt, the apprentice replied. Master Gaunt frowned lightly before turning to his apprentice, who wore a beige tunic under a smart white waistcoat, dark brown trousers, and smart brown shoes. It's below average for this time of year, Master Gaunt explained. Normally, people have more ailments in mid-spring. If it was summer, then maybe. At least it means people are healthy, the apprentice optimistically pointed out. Master Gaunt chuckled as he removed his reading glasses and placed them on the countertop before closing the thick leather-bound book shut with a loud thud. Yes, but Leon, I also want to stay in business, his master stated, understanding that the prosperity of the apothecary was directly tied to the ill health of the townsfolk. He needed sick people. As Master Gaunt lifted the accounting book with both arms, he was surprised that Leon was still standing there. How's the studying? Gaunt asked curiously. I've been reading through the recommended text, Leon began. But reading the list of essential herbs, why is red kappa included? Isn't it just a regular red onion? Leon, a lot of herbs are food, Master Gaunt bluntly pointed out. However, red kappa can be used to treat venom bites. Great if you happen to cross a snake around here. So it's used in venom antidotes, Leon figured, his master lightly nodding in agreement. I suggest, when you have the time, to read the book titled Venoms and Antidotes. It should answer any more questions you might have about these specific ingredients, Master Gaunt advised as he swept an arm across the counter surface, sliding the coins into a hard lockable metal container for safekeeping. As he was about to enter the back stores, there was an almighty crash with the sound of bottles clinking and smashing across the floor. What the hell just happened in there, John? Master Gaunt exclaimed, running in to investigate. Leon peered through the door to see what had happened. John was the store's clerk and was muscular and tall with blue eyes and short messy brown hair. He wore brown trousers and a tunic with rolled up sleeves. Thankfully, John was not harmed as he stood surrounded by several crates that had smashed onto the floor. Unfortunately, he was about to be reprimanded by Master Gaunt. Not needing to be there a moment longer, Leon quickly and quietly put on his leaf green overcoat and headed for the front exit, while the other two began arguing about the loss of vital antidotes. Leon stepped out onto the cobblestone street. The sun so low in the sky, its orange glow now only illuminating the rooftops. The air was starting to become a little chilly, while several men with smouldering sticks were slowly lighting the street lamps. As he walked along the high street, store owners continued to pack up while the bakery, although now shut, continued working with smoke lightly bellowing from its chimneys, readying the ovens for the next day's supply of bread. But then he noticed a crowd of people gathered in the middle of the town square, next to a monument of a long-forgotten hero. Leon approached the group to see why the crowd was cheering and applauding, and he soon found his answer. Connor Kemp, hero of Farshire, was loudly and boastfully telling the stories of his most recent adventure. He had short blonde hair and blue eyes with a large muscular build clad in light armour composed of leather and steel with golden trims. His large two-handed gilded broadsword was in a scabbard strapped to his back. Leon decided to listen in on the latest adventures of the famed hero. So, there was this group of 15 bandits, and they clearly looked ready to raid a village, Connor Kemp began telling, the crowd eager to listen. I couldn't just let them get away with such villainous acts, so I strolled into their camp and demanded they leave before I made them. Of course, being the sort of people they were, laughed at me before we got ourselves embroiled in a fight. The crowd gasped, but Leon listened intently. He, although wanting to become a master apothecary one day, had an avid taste for adventure stories. Ah, but don't worry, Connor Kemp reassured. I've dealt with much worse than this. He drew out his broadsword and swung it around as he continued his story. A few simple swings of my sword, and I had them piled 15 high. The loot they had plundered just days prior were returned to the kingdom, and let's just say, we're 15 less bandits this week than the last. As Connor finished, the crowd applauded and cheered their hero, who had worked so hard to keep their lives safe. Leon too joined in the applause, but kept it moderate, not wanting to make a fool out of himself like some of the wailing people around him. Stand aside, barked a voice. Just then, a town guard clad in silver breastplate and leather parted the crowd and marched towards the centre of it. He had a scowl on his face as he glared at Connor Kemp, who acknowledged him with little concern. Kemp, the guard angrily shouted. You were required in the barracks 10 minutes ago per the orders of Captain Anderson. Connor Kemp shrugged confidently before turning to his crowd. That's all, folks. A hero has work to do, he said charismatically, as he brushed shoulders with the guard hard enough to knock him unsteady. The crowd began to disperse, while Leon briefly watched the two men march off towards the barracks in the town centre for a few moments longer. It had gotten darker, the sky turning a navy blue with the most brilliant stars beginning to dot the heavens. Seeing his breath from the dropping temperature, Leon continued his way home while pondering on the latest adventures of Connor Kemp, hero of Farshire. The smell of cooking was strong in the air, with various meats and stews to feed hungry mouths from a day's work. This motivated Leon to get home soon to not let his dinner get cold. However, as he turned a corner and headed towards a tavern, he locked eyes with a young woman he had known since his youth. Natasha, he brightly announced. Leon, she responded, surprised. They both stood there on the street corner for a second in silence. Natasha was wearing a green button hunting vest with a long green and flexible skirt covering her all the way down to her shin-high boots. Her brown hair was tied back, except for the bangs that ran down the sides of her head. She was the first to break the silence. I don't normally see you walking home, she pointed out, her brown eyes expressing a subtle warmth to Leon's presence that contrasted with her pale skin. Had a question about work-related stuff with Master Gunn, Leon explained. And your day? Leon asked out of courtesy. He knew they both felt awkward around each other. They were friends when they were younger, but differing ambitions led them to drift apart. Productive. No more winter's monsters lurking in the forest and plenty of wild meat to boot, she answered, keenly taking satisfaction in her achievement that day. A safer forest then, Leon presumed. Oh, it's never safe in there, Natasha chuckled. It's getting late, Leon stated as the dim glow of the orange lamps replaced the faded brilliance of daytime. We should get home before it gets too dark. Natasha sighed as she began to shift herself in the opposite direction to that of Leon's. Sorry, but a militia meeting is being held tonight at the barracks, and that's part of my job now. You're a part of the militia now? Leon asked, surprised. Yeah, it's my first one, and I'm running a bit late, so catch you later, maybe. Sunday, Natasha said in a rush as she began to walk away at a brisk pace. Okay, see you later then, Leon waved. Natasha gave Leon a wave in return and rushed off in the direction of the town centre where the barracks, as well as the council chamber and the treasury were located. Leon was disappointed he couldn't use the opportunity to catch up with his friends, since the last time they had met was months ago. Hungry and disappointed, the young man continued to walk through the dim orange light of the streets, the buildings becoming less and less dense, as well as more residential, with wooden frames and plastered brick composing most of their form. He continued to dwell on his meeting with Natasha. 6 years ago, they were close friends, but she was always interested in the forest and hunting, while he felt his time better spent learning the apothecary trade to help people. This difference ultimately led them to seeing less and less of one another as they grew up. Dwelling on this seemed to have passed the time for Leon as he reached his home, or rather a tavern by the name of the Serpent's Folly, owned by his father. Entering the tavern, Leon saw the usual sight of patrons and smelt the usual odour of ale, liquor and spirits. Plus, there were some travelling traders who were to be spending the night. They were dressed in fine blue and purple clothes or brown thick winter hides. Some of these were merchants from the north stopping off for the night. Leon quickly made his way to the back without anyone noticing and into a quieter hallway. "How was work?" an old man's voice asked. "A bit quiet," Leon responded, putting his leaf green coat on a peg and turning to see his father. "Maybe I should put more spirits in their drinks then. Give them a severe hangover," his father suggested. Leon chuckled but didn't take it seriously. "Dinner is ready in the back of the house," Roy told his son, who nodded, then walked through the door at the end of the hallway. Night was now rapidly descending, with the sky becoming blacker and blacker by the minute. The town had become chillier and quieter, except for the taverns where drunkards squabbled. Leon sat in his warm room, illuminated by a glowing orange lamp crystal above his head. He was entrenched in his studies and surrounded by books, clumsily stacked on top of one another. A pile of notes scribbled on paper lay in a mountain on his oak desk, while he read the book called Local Herbs of Farshire. He was so caught up in his book that he was startled by the sudden loud crashing and crumbling outside of his window as a nearby building suddenly and violently collapsed.